All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Saltivation. It's Stacey, Alex, Meredith, and Tram here with you again. We wanted to share with you today some recent legislation and some cases that are percolating in a couple of states related to cookies. More specifically, in California, there is an ACMA case related to Public Law 86-272, which you might think, what does that have to do with cookies? And that's what we're here to kind of talk to you about a little bit. And then there's a Massachusetts case that was decided at the end of December that also talked about sales tax nexus and cookies. And so while these, again, are two different tax types, meaning that the Public Law 86-272, for those of you that know, is related to income tax. The cookie nexus for Massachusetts related to sales tax. There are some things here with these two cases, two issues that are interrelated. And so we just wanted to, give everybody a little flavor of that. These are moving targets, so we don't have answers for you today, but at least we wanted to give you a little bit of information and background as we follow these.
Nice pun, Stacey. Cookies and flavor. I like it.
No pun intended.
To those who are not regulars or don't really follow state tax as closely or geek out about it like we do as much, which is totally fine because we're crazy.
We're here for.
Cookies. When we talk about cookies, we're talking about the tiny little pieces of code that gets placed on a computer to track your activity. So,
you have to
this
agree
is a joke
to.
that's been made about 1 million times already over the years. I'm not original, but we're not talking about cookies that you eat. Just wanted to put that out there as a baseline. Anyway.
Those same cookies that you have to agree to every time you go to a website.
Right.
Yeah. And let's think about how many times we do that, right? Just in normal everyday life, right?
Complete tangent. Does anybody actually go into when it says settings and only select necessary, or do you just hit accept all? Because I always do the strictly necessary ones only. It gets really obnoxious, but
I just exit out.
Yeah. Anyway,
See what happens.
Depends on how I feel. Sometimes
let's talk about why this is important, right? So I'll set the stage on the income tax side. So Public Law 86-272, as most of you may or may not be aware, is a federal law, was put in place in 1959. It is still good law. Basically, short story is that if a taxpayer is selling a tangible item into a state and the only activity that they have in the state in which that item is being shipped to is the solicitation of that good, solicitation of the sale of that good, the order is accepted and shipped from outside that state, then the sale does not have to be sourced to the customer location, so the state of the customer, so the ship to location. So that's the short story, and there's lots of nuances around Public Law 86-272. We could spend all day just on that, but that's the short story of what Public Law 86-272 is. There's lots of rules around what is solicitation, and we won't spend time on those either. However, in 2021, the MTC, the Multi-State Tax Commission, issued guidance to kind of bring Public Law 86-272 into the 21st century. And again, it's the Multi-State Tax Commission. It is not it's a quasi-governmental body who has put out this guidance, and it's related to interactive websites, and that's where cookies come in. And so one of the activities that the MTC guidance specifies as potentially losing Public Law 86-272 protection is by accepting cookies on a computer in a state in which a user might be. So if I'm sitting here in Colorado and I accept cookies, and those cookies are used for more than just solicitation, then the MTC would say that that's an unprotected activity and would fail Public Law 86-272 protection. Now, again, can't caveat this enough to say that this is MTC. The states have, some states, a couple, honestly, have decided to adopt this new guidance, one of which is California. And there is an ACMA case that's currently being litigated that is fighting California's adoption of this. And so it's it's currently being litigated. We don't have an update on where it stands right now. But that's the setting for cookies from an income tax perspective. And so then I'll let somebody else kind of handle what we're doing with Massachusetts then.
Well, so before we jump into Massachusetts, I just kind of want to back up a little bit and clarify. I think that this is a point of confusion for maybe people who aren't state and local tax people, or if they are, sometimes they do get confused too. But I think the Public Law 86272 analysis is not addressing nexus, which is like another very complicated topic. But I think in terms of how you want to analyze what this really means and the impact, it really isn't addressing whether or not you have nexus, because I think kind of how you described it, Stacey, if you are conducting only certain activities in the state, like you're only soliciting sales of tangible goods in the state, that is a nexus. But this Public Law 86272 is saying you are protected from paying the state income tax. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Correct. And I think where you're going to see, as we transition to that sales tax piece, where there's interplay, is often when you can identify that you've got sales tax or income tax nexus, that leads you to have to file the opposite tax. So you register for sales tax, that puts the jurisdiction on alert that you possibly have nexus for income tax purposes, and vice versa. So as we kind of interplay cookies and income tax and sales tax, so if you were to have sales tax nexus in Massachusetts related to cookies, that could do something for income tax, where depending on the outreach of this, is it physical presence? Is it more than mere solicitation? Can you claim this protection and not be subject to income tax? And what is a cookie? What does a cookie mean? Where does a cookie live? Is it in-state, out-of-state? It's on an in-state computer, but where is the server? Where is the Massachusetts references CDNs, which is content distribution network? So where is all of that? And the facts of this identify or allude to these kind of housing outside of a customer's computer outside of Massachusetts. But what happens if one of those were in state? So, high level, and Alex, as one of the attorneys of our group, can maybe provide a little bit more color, but the end of the day, Massachusetts said a cookie stored on an in-state computer is not nexus enough to create nexus for sales tax purposes.
No, Mary, I think you summarized it perfectly. So this is the U.S. Auto Parts Network case out of Massachusetts. It was decided by their Supreme Court, Massachusetts Supreme Court, and the ultimate conclusion, or the ultimate decision of the court, was that really there was not enough detail to opine on whether cookies are physical presence. So they kind of punted a little bit on that, to many of our disappointments. But I think there's an inference there to be drawn, and maybe some more facts can be fleshed out to really, get to the meat of it. But the case was a win for the taxpayer, even though the language wasn't in the decision that we would have hoped to have seen. So, because the court's actual decision was that, because it was ambiguous enough that it got essentially decided against the state by default, because the language of the statute was ambiguous. So, but the cookies are the common thread, right? And I think the devil's going to be in the details, just like Meredith said. But that's the common thread, uniting these two cases, and how this modernization of Public Law 86272 that the MTC is undertaking, what shape is it going to take with the states, and what's going to happen from a sales tax perspective as far as nexus goes. So it's just a really hot area. It's really interesting to watch what's happening right now, because we got these two sophisticated, large states issuing some guidance, some decisions, or in California's case, soon.
Right. So we keep everybody posted as we get more information and some of these cases are decided, and or if some other states put out more guidance or additional guidance, different guidance with respect to cookies or any of the other interactive website items that are called out in the modernization of the MTC or the Public Law 6272 by the MTC. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Good stuff.
Continue to follow us at Saltivation for all of our court updates.